Last week, we kind of got off on a tangent there, talking about whatever came to my mind at the time. But anyway, I want to go back to Judges, the first chapter of Judges. If you'll all turn over to the first chapter of Judges, and just a brief. Get my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. So, here we go. I got my papers all shuffled in here. Here we go. So, if you go back and you look at this is, I took this out of King James. Of course, it says the continuing conquest of the land, or of Canaan, but it should be of the land that was promised to them. And so as we go into it, the first thing it does, it talks about after the death of Joshua, and it talks about the generation of people after them, and when he died, who was going to be the leader. Now, what was Joshua? He was the one that delivered them into the land, but he was also the one that led them into battle. So what they're looking for is, who do we have now that's going to lead us into battle? And of course, if you read the first part of it, they took somebody out of the house of Judah, or the house of Yehudah, and it was out of the house of Caleb. It was his son that was going to be the one that led him into battle. And so for that first, I'm kind of paraphrasing, we don't want to read through the whole thing we'd be here. It's kind of a hodgepodge of things, because it covers going out and taking the land, and he picks some people. He takes some people from Benjamin, he takes some people from Simeon. And remember, Simeon's area, they took their control of their area. They're right in the middle of Yehudah's territory. So they're surrounded by Yehudah. That's engulfed. In fact, if you went back to Bereshit and you go to the what would befall the children of Israel in their last days, Simeon and Levi were kind of divided out from everybody. So Levi became the priesthood, and Simeon was put into the middle of Yehudah, so that he was kind of like locked in. And it would be the same way for the priesthood, because they were locked into Yehudah. Or into Yahuwah. So anyway, it goes on and it gives tribe by tribe by tribe who didn't follow the instructions that was given to them to take the land and to displace the people that were in the land. And as you notice, when you get down when you get down to Zebulun and Naphtali and those people at the end of that first chapter, they're the ones that just kind of took the spot that they were sitting at and just left the other people around them to do what they wanted. Sometimes they took people into slavery, or into bondage, into forced labor to work for them, but most of the time they were at the mercy of these people, the Philistines, the Canaanites, and whoever in there. And you go on to the second verse, and when we get in the second chapter, we get a rehab of Joshua, and he gives his time zone. So we're in the time zone. He was in the land 50 years when he died. Okay, we think that you kind of approximate. So when Caleb went in at the end of the 40 years, he was probably around 80 years old, because he was a young man coming into battle when they were leaving Egypt. So he'd have been 20 years old. That was the time that you went into manhood, I guess, into battle. So he would have been about, he was 110 years old when he died, so he'd been in the land at least 50 years, okay? And probably at this time, and starting in Judges, when they're talking about this, who's going to fight for it, this is still a generation that was somewhat following the scriptures. Now remember, all the way through Joshua, there was always problems with people following the instructions. His last thing was about getting the land divided and getting the lots settled. And they finally, at the very end, everybody got their areas, but they had to go in and take it. They never took possession of their land, but they had it marked out. They went out and surveyed it, I guess would be the picture. And from that point, they went and described their land and came back and gave it to Joshua. Joshua, they threw lots for it, went to the good things, says, okay, you guys, everybody got their allotment. Everybody had a chunk of the land. But none of them, not all of them, ever got rid of everybody that was in the land or took control of their land. Some of them just went and settled, especially Naphtali, Zebulun, and Asher, and some of those, they just kind of set where they were at and kind of just defended what they had. They never went to really possess the land. So that's what leads us into Judges. But as I said before, where we first saw Judges was with Jethro, when he came in and met with Moses in the wilderness, when he brought the wife and the 2 children, his 2 sons, and he noticed that Moses was sitting out there. I think we covered that last week, sitting out there all day doing this judging. And the judging was just making judgments to help the people decide what to do, what was right, what was wrong, and it was supposed to. And so eventually they picked elders from the tribes, from all of the different tribes. They took elders, guys like me, I guess. not that old, but guys that had been around for a while. And they put them to make just judgments of how things would be. And that's how they come about to have these judges. They weren't priests. They were just elders of the people. And so the judges, as we go into going into their into the teachings.
What chapter are you in?
I'm sorry?
What chapter are you in?
What
chapter are you in?
Oh, I'm just giving you a brief of the 2 chapters, the first and second chapter, okay, of Judges. The first chapter is about the tribe of Yehuda being selected as the one that was going to fight the battles or lead them into battles. And I think it was the son of Caleb. And anyway, so that started out fine, but I don't think that they ever went any farther than Benjamin to the north. They just took care of the areas in the south. The tribes in the north never really took their land. Ephraim was settled, Manasseh was settled. The rest of them were basically 7 tribes of people that had not taken their land, really taken possession of it. So they, like I said, they cast lots for it. They went out, did their surveying, described their land, and they went to it, but they never really took the land over. So if we, just moving into chapter 3, and I'm going to briefly go through it. So chapter 3. So this is where we start seeing judges being picked. Okay, so we know that from chapter 3, verse 1 to 8 was the results of what was happening under Rishalayim. If you go to verse 1, chapter 3, verse 1. Make sure I got the right things here. So when it starts out, and I'm going to read from my scriptures, and I have a hard time reading and walking, and anyway. And these are the nations which Yahuwah left to try Israel by them, all those who had not known all the battles in Canaan, only that the generations of the children of Israel might know to teach them battle. Only those who before them did not know them. 5 princes of the Philistines and of the Canaanites and of the Sidonites, and the Quis, who dwelt in Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal, Hebron, to the entrance of the Hamrath, okay? And they were to try Israel by them to know whether they would obey the commandments of Yahuwah, which he had commanded their fathers by the hand of Moshe. Thus the children of Israel dwelt in the midst of the Canaanites, the Kiddites, the Amorites, the Petzerites, and the Kuis, and the Jebusites. Okay, and took their daughters to be their wives, and gave their daughters to their sons, and they served their mighty ones. Thus the children of Israel did evil in the eyes of Yahuwah, and forgot Yahuwah and their Elohim, and served the Baalams and the Ashereth. So that gives you where they were at. They took the lands, but they also just intermingled with the people that were in the lands with them. These are mostly the northern tribes. So, the first instance, get my stuff together here. Okay, so in verse 6 it says, and the displeasure of Yahuwah burned against Israel, and he sold them into the land of the Cushan, Reshahaim, sovereign of Aram, and the children of Israel served him 8 years. So they didn't have their people. They didn't have their people taking care of business. They were under the leadership of this man or king or whatever he was in this village for 8 years. And these 8 years, he was controlled outside of the voice of Yahuwah. This was just like, I think we were talking a little while ago about how the world makes governments, and it's the Creator. When he created, he was making a one world government that was his. He was the one world government, and his people were the house of Israel that we find out later. And that was his world. However, that still hasn't come about because we're still in defiance of how he did it, how he wants it to be. And I'm trying to, it's a little off of the subject, but not. So these people were just willing to drop Yahuwah, didn't pay attention to his covenants, his commandments, his teaching and instructions. So when you see the word Torah, Torah is teaching and instructions, and his covenants and his commandments were teachings and instructions. So when you look at Torah, it takes in everything. Every instruction that he gave Moses, every instruction that Moses was given, told to give the children, everything that he told them to do, from making the tabernacle to walking across the desert, whatever it was, those were teaching and instructions to have those people follow his way. So in this instance, they weren't following, so they put this leader from that in charge for 8 years. So we look at this 8 years as a time of trouble. We could do 7 years of Jacob's trouble, but these were troubling times because these kings or these leaders would usually use the people of Israel as their bounty, take what they want from them. They would take their wives, they would take their whatever they wanted, they would take. They were just like being back in Egypt. That would be the best excuse or the best thing. So for 8 years, this man's in charge. And then along comes somebody that looked at what was going on, and I'm sure it was the Creator putting this into his heart. In chapter 8, or verse 8, in verse 9, we can read, It says, and when the children of Israel cried out to Yahuwah, Yahuwah raised up a deliverer, okay, his deliverer, to deliver them. His name was Othaniel, son of Cunez, Caleb's younger brother. So this one came in, and he displaced this Rishathaim. I'm not really good at these names. I don't know if you guys are better at it, but I can barely get the English names in, let alone these. But anyway, we'll get through it. So he comes in and he takes over, and they have 40 years of rest. And that's what it says. They had 40 years of rest. So what would that rest be? I mean, this is what the Creator had planned for man. They were following his covenants, his commandments. They were following his instructions. They were doing the things that he designed them to do. They were doing their daily, I imagine that, Shiloh was still there. They still had the priest in the area. Each tribe had a group, what they called, areas where they were refuge that they could go to for protection if they needed it. That was controlled by the priesthood. They weren't the high priest, they were of the priesthood. And they were spread out all through the tribes. If you read out when they divided the land, there was so many of them. There was at least one in every piece of everybody's area. There was at least one section that was a refuge, city of refuge. So anyway, they had 40 years of rest. As long as this man was alive and keeping people in control, like Moses was trying to do, and like Yeshua tried to do when he was there. As long as those people were following, they had this time of peace. I would, and I'm not trying, I don't want to get into saying this is what it means. I'm trying to tell you it could be a picture, a type and shadow of the kingdom that he's talking about. First of all, the whole land was going to be a picture of the kingdom. He was giving them this kingdom, and they were dividing it up. Nobody did it right, so nobody really ever completely took charge of the land that he gave them, okay? And they continually fell away from that. It's just like the world's been going on for centuries. So for those 40 years they had rest, and it was peaceful, and it was joyful. How's that sounding? Okay? And then this gentleman dies, and along comes another guy. Turn to 15, chapter 3, verse 15. I should have highlighted them. So then we have a man that comes along. Now these people just didn't come along. Now we have to go back. These are people that Yahuwah picked for these purposes, okay? Now, when I go through the deals, you see these blotted out little blue dots on here. When you're going through there, these are all the Creator's signature, the Aleph Tav that he puts when he's doing things. So every one of these people that comes in, bad and good, has the earmark that the Creator put in there for the purpose that they were intended to be there for, okay? So when they were bad, it was because the Creator said, okay, you guys need straightening out. Boom, you're going to get this guy, and you're going to have him for so many years. So, verse 15. Are you following me, Amanda? Read
Yes.
Verse 15 through. That'll be better because 15 through 21.
But when the people of Israel cried out to Adonai, Adonai raised up for them a savior, Ehud the son of Gera from the tribe of Benjamin, a left-handed man. The people of Israel appointed him to take their tribute to Eglon the king of Moab. Ehud made himself a double-edged sword, 18 inches long, and strapped it to his right thigh under his clothes. when he presented the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. Now Eglon was a very fat man. When he had finished presenting the tribute, he dismissed the people who had brought it. But he himself, after reaching the quarries of Gilgal, went back and said, "King, I have a secret message for you." The king commanded silence, and all his attendants withdrew. Ehud came to him. He was sitting alone by himself in his upstairs room, where it was cool. Ehud said, "I have a message from Yahweh for you." As the king rose from his seat, Ehud reached out with his left hand, took the sword from his right thigh, and thrust it into the king's belly.
Thank you. So, that ended the 18 years of penalty that came about after the death of we were talking about the other one. So when Eli was there, for this guy was in charge of Israel for 18 years. So they were under, again, a type of tribulation or a type of trouble that the Creator had laid upon them because of their disregard for His teaching and instructions. So from that, it went from 18 years to 80 years of rest. As, you know, we talked about generations. We look at 40 years as maybe as a biblical generation. When you look at how many times 40 is used in generations, and well, it starts with gestation. So growing something to its maturity, you know, getting that embryo to a child, to a human, 40 years to take those people through the wilderness, to build them up to the point, through all of their trials and tribulations, to build them up, to mature them enough to go into the land. Okay, that was a generation of people. So we have 80 years now of rest. Now that from this incident that put this guy to bed permanently, so they had 80 years of rest, 80 years of this picture of life by being obedient. And I hate to use the word obedient because it's not obedience, it's about the heart, the love that wants to do it. He doesn't, you know, they say a lot of things that they say that they were not obedient, they were not obedient. But in scriptures, when you look at it, it's not obedience, it's that they turned their back on the Creator. They turned their back on His ways. They didn't follow His ways. Because He doesn't want, if He wanted us to be obedient, He could have made us like the animals. We could have just run by instinct, right? But He didn't. He gave us hearts, minds, conscience to think for ourselves. It's because He wants us to do it from our hearts.
You think of John 14:15, right? Those who love me keep my commandments. It's like when a child loves their parent, right? They want to please their parents. So
Right.
you know, just add on to that heart condition, because they loved Him, they said, okay, we want to please our Father.
Well, if you just take the picture of a child, okay, a baby being born, totally innocent, there's nothing wrong with them. I know, you know, they might keep you up at night and all that stuff, but it's just part of maturing to be that adult. But what happened? I had one of my own and 3 adopted, and it didn't matter. They were all the same to me, right? And I raised them up. They were good kids, and all that, but you know what? You always still had problems. There was always something that would happen. And that's the maturity that they're talking about. We try to bring them up so that they want to be better than us. We want them to have more than we have. Maybe that's the wrong thing. It should be we want them to have more of the Creator than we ever had, okay? And that's the way I would look at it. I wish I'd have been more that way when those kids were growing up. But when I come into this, they were already grown up, so I had to reprogram them. And I did very well with 3 of them. One of them is, but It's about, you know, when you, I don't know, I can remember when it's like, I started this walk and I got Mama going and we're going through the little steps, and then all of a sudden it's like the oldest son says, so where are we going now? You know, we've been, it's LDS and we've been this and we've been this, you know, so it's kind of like a shock to them. But this is what, this 80 years of rest is a major thing in here. So as we come to this 80 years of rest, then we come to this Yibin and Sisera, this governor, king, whatever, that took the land once these 80 years was up, and all these people forgot who the creator was, and they started going off and they started doing their idols and they started building their ashes, and they had their idols, their house idols, and they had their trees and their whatever it was, they were all out there doing it just like their neighbors were doing. And so along comes this guy. For 20 years these people are in charge, and then for the first time we see Deborah or Deborah, who is a prophetess, which we see many of them, and we don't see a lot of them, but we see them in there where the Creator uses a woman. And if we read through that, it's like, what do we got? Maybe a whole chapter and a half on her, because the big thing was that she went out and led the battle. She appointed somebody to go, and they said, well, I'm not going unless you go. And the thing was this: if you do this, a woman, Anisha, a woman, will get the credit for saving Israel. Okay? And so the guy was good with that. So anyway, if you read the story, I'll make it short. They have the battle. The guy that's leading it, the Sierra guy, whatever is Sierra, Sisera, he gets panicked and he runs into a tent, and there's a lady there, and she's all tuned in, not Deborah, but another lady, and she covers him up and puts him and gives him a glass of cold milk, and then she takes a stake and drives it through his head. Okay, so she ended it. Now they go into the king, or this, what's his name? Yibin, and they cut off his big toes and his thumbs, and they let him crawl for crumbs under the table like he did with all of his people. Something along that line. But the point is, a woman took this matter into hand and took care of the business, and she was appointed by the Creator, and very much so. It's very evident that all the way through there, when Deborah's spoken about, it's got the olive pod earmarking everything that she did and everything said. Of course, we got one chapter of them just singing about Deborah and the gal killing steaks. They got a lot of press out of it. But anyway, when she's done, there was 20 years of this time, a half a generation of people that came out from that 80 years, people that came out for 20 years, they see nothing but distress after they've been part of that 80 years of rest. And they come to this part now where they have another 40 years. And if you notice these, the rest periods are 40s, 80s, 40s, 40s, and then there's one down at the end that comes out about 48 years. And I don't know if it's a rest, but Gideon, same way. It's the same way all the way through there. So through this part of the scriptures, when we're looking at this, we're giving years of rest versus years of tribulation, trials, or whatever you want to call it. So you have approximately 412 years by the time you get to Solomon. And we all know the story of Solomon, right? So I don't know if that was a period of rest when he was there. I kind of put a question mark behind it because they were the Philistines were harassing him, but in return, he was harassing them. He was a pain in their side. He was like a thorn in their side, all the way up to the end until he demolished them. So you're talking about a time probably about 500 years of these people from the time they came into the land through the time of Joshua and up to the time of Samson or Shimshon, which Philistines had 40 years, 2 generations of stuff going on, and then Samson comes along and they get 20 years of him. But I don't know if that was a rest period, because I think those 60 years was all a lot of turmoil, but there was 20 years of him that he actually had control of what was going on, because he was the man that was pushing the buttons on him. So in all that time, from the time we get to Samuel, which is a little bit later in there, we have some other times in there with three or four different leaders. That was for 20 years, 23 years, 22 years, and one for we had Yiflak was for 6 years, Abstan for 7 years, Elon for 10 years, and Abdon for 8 years. You put all those in there. You got Yahar for 22 years, and somebody else for 23 years. So all of these people, we have these times of rest in there. That outnumbers the times of distress. Okay. But when we look at this, it all comes back to each one of these was about somebody that wanted to be in control over the house of Israel other than the Creator, and he always made sure that that was going to be it. And I think it's a type and shadow, a picture of where the world is and what it talks about when we talk about the system out there that's going to be this one world system that is going to be created by the Creator. And the leaders of it are going to come out of the house of Israel. They're not going to be how would you say it? Non-Israelis. It's going to come out of the house of Israel. And I'm not a Revelation. I mean, I love Revelation and I love Ezekiel. Those are the only 2 books in the Bible I ever read for 15 years. You know, I could read that. That was my night. Revelation and Ezekiel, I could read those things and read them over and over and over again. I probably never really understood all of it, but I just liked reading it. I always thought there was something there to find, which there is. But what we get in the scriptures is definitely a picture of what the Creator's trying to do with his people. So he doesn't want he doesn't want to make mandatory things that says this is the way I'm going to make it, and you're going to do it like this, like he did with the animals. He gave us a heart, he gave us a mind, he gave us a way to reason, and he did that, and you can see what it caused all the way through the scriptures. Man is always trying to outthink what the Creator wants, or try to make it better. Man has never created anything except chaos. Man can only take what was created and create something with that. So what did the Creator created everything, and we've had all of these scientific, look what we have now. I just got a deal on my cell phone that says, hey, punch this in and you can have AI tell you everything you need to know, right? I'm kind of afraid of that. They might tell me something I don't want to hear. But anyway, this is stuff that man, the Creator, put every bit of knowledge of the world in every brain. It's there because he created you in his likeness and his image. And I'm not talking about the outer, I'm talking about the inner, okay? His likeness is his image. So we all sit here with the same insides, the same innards, right? You guys are all agree with me. Sometimes we have some diseases and stuff in there, but I'm talking about how we were made in his likeness and image. So we have the same ability to reason. And man's always tried to reason themselves into something better. So when they came out off of the flood and we had people, Shem and two brothers, and the people scattered around, and they go out, and the first thing they want to do is build a tower up so they can reach the sky to be with their creator, right? So they didn't create anything, they just took mud, clay, tar that was already there, and they made blocks, and they started putting them together, and they stacked these things up to make a tower, all right? It's a picture of stumbling blocks that the Creator gave us in our mind to produce our own stumbling blocks. Would you agree with that? I don't think he put stumbling blocks, I don't think he made stumbling blocks out there for people to trip over. I really do know that he's given it to man to have all of these ideas, and so we make these stumbling blocks. And this is my opinion. It's not, you might not find anybody else that agrees with it. But the temple was built by everything that was hewn, sawed, clipped, formed, and made from the creation, from what the Creator created. They chopped it up, they cut the stones, they made these things, and they made themselves a stumbling block. People worship that they worship that temple more than they worship the Creator. If you really read the scripture, because it was always the temple, Solomon's temple, Solomon's temple, Solomon's temple. It was never Yehuda's temple, it was Solomon's temple. So I think those kinds of things we make stumbling blocks on, and I think that the world is tripping over itself today. And I'm not saying we're bad people, because we're just part of the world that's there today. But when you think about these pictures that he gave us of these years of rest, he's showing you a picture of the kingdom, what it's like. And we've never had that for, some people might think we got it good now, but it's not. It's just, you keep reading, just follow the news and you'll see how great things are out there. It's great in my house, but once I step off the property, I'm not too sure about it. But anyway, I really, I was sitting here, my brain kind of goes crazy at times, but I was sitting here and I just was doodling, and it's, all the things that he proposed for us, the people, the children of Israel, was for a picture of the kingdom of heaven here on earth. That Garden of Eden, in the very beginning, when he created the Garden of Eden, that's a picture of the kingdom. The Garden of Eden, that was going to be the place, okay? And then he locked mankind out, and then we had to live our lives for, not quite as good as Methuselah and those people, but we might make it to, I just seen a World War II veteran that was 102 years old the other day that probably thinks better than I do, and he was sharp as a tack, or else they had a tape recorder tied to his back, but he sure sounded good. He was 102 years old. So we have the ability to think for ourselves, but we also have the ability to try to outthink the Creator, and I think that's what man's trying to do. So in our hearts, we've got to try to submit to Him. You ever heard the deal says, the wife, submit to your husband? You've heard that, right? I've had people say, well, man, I'm the boss. And I said, no, I said, you don't read that right. And I says, first of all, the Creator looks at us as His bride, right? I mean, we're His children. We're never teenagers. We're always children or his bride, but we're never teenagers. He knows that teenagers are bad news. So anyway. Well, if my mom was alive, she'd tell you that teenagers are bad news. But anyway, so when we now kind of lost my thought, but we are his bride, and he says, if you read the scriptures, he says, all through it is what he's saying: submit to me, and I'll take care of all your needs. Not everything we want, all our needs. And that's what, when they tell the bride, submit to your husband, it's, and like I told my brother, and he says, you got it wrong, little brother. I says, you are now responsible to take care of all of her needs. You're the man of the house. You take care of that wife and the children that come behind or along with it. You are the one that's on your back now. So you're taking the responsibility, and that's what the Creator did. That's his picture of what he wants in life. Submit to him, and he will take care of us. And he takes care of us, a lot of us, and we do. None of us in here is perfect. We all do things that are not, probably, what would say, kosher. I don't like to use that word, but not, we do things that, yeah, but, he'll forgive me for it, or whatever. And then you go and pray about it. But we really do that. Everybody does it. And if you say you don't, well, that's fine. That's on you. But I know that we do that. We try to figure a way to, maybe if we just move that toothpick over a little bit, we won't have to bother with it or whatever it is. But he's watching over us, and he knows that. And he's not there. He already knows that there's nobody on the face of this earth that's perfect. He already said that. He's told us that. So is what this is about is when we read these things in the scriptures, these are pictures of what we are looking at today. We're looking at mankind that runs to the voting booth and votes for somebody that's going to make everything perfect. And they're not going to do it. He's going to do it, and it's going to be in his time. Now, some people can figure out his time. I have never figured it out. But he's got his time for everything to happen. So, again, while we're reading all of it, while we went through this today, I just picked that time with these 500 years that shows exactly what he wants. He gave peace to people, he gave rest to them, he provided for them, everything was hunky-dory, if that's a good way to say it. And then when they messed up and they started fading away and saying, well, we can do this and we can do that, look at today. Look at the hundreds, I don't even know how many religions are out there. So when anybody starts talking to you about a religion, you might want to think about turning around and walking away, because that's something man-made, because there's no religion in the Bible. There's righteousness, right? He looks at people to be righteous, and that's our desire. So I hope I didn't bother you. I don't even know what the time zone is.
You're good.
You're good?
Yeah.
So anyway, is there any questions, or you want to throw something or whatever?
I'd like to throw one thing up. Like the cycle of the judges, this is all cycles.
Right.
The same thing kept happening over and over and over. He used cycles. Well, I would say he designed our brains to be able to identify cycles.
If we pay attention, and we were talking about, modern man looks at, if you see the scientists, and they want to try to stay away from them, but when they make their little time thing, they have a line over here and they have a line up. Okay, this is the whatever, the prehistoric age, 50 billion years, and then there's this, and then there's this. And the Creator doesn't work like that. His is a cyclical thing. If you read it, everything is cyclical. Okay, 7 days a week. Okay, start with a minute. Start with seconds. 60 seconds a minute, 60 minutes is an hour. 24 hours, and of course these are our times that we put there, but they are the cycles. And then we have the 7-day week, then we have the monthly cycles, and then the yearly cycles. But we also have to remember that he deals with festivals and feast days, okay? So we start out with the first month, the first new moon of the year, in the springtime at the time. And I'm not gonna go there, but there's 100 ways people figure it out, but it's usually in March or April, okay? Time around the spring equinox. That starts his festivals, okay? You have the first appointed time is Passover, which is preparation. The 14th day is the preparation day. 15th day is festival, it's a Sabbath. And then 7 days later is another Sabbath. Then we start the count of Omar, and we count up to Shavuot. And then we go into the 7th month. And if you read Psalms 31, I think it is, and read the whole thing instead of just a couple, 3 verses that everybody read. It's a very beautiful picture of the celebration of the 7th month of festivals. The sounding of the shofar, the new moon, the Day of Atonement, Judgment, the full moon, the Day of Tabernacle, and then the last day is the last great day. It's the beginning of a new cycle, and that's his cycle. So we do months, and we do hours and deals, but really when he talks about times, and half times, he's talking about his cycles. 3.5 cycles, if that's what you remember. Time is one cycle. You read Daniel and you read the definition of what a times and a half time is. If you really read the rest, it's not about years, it's about his cycles, okay? Which is basically years, but it's still his cycles. So everything he does is in cycles. We're the ones that walk those straight lines, but we should be living in cycles, okay? But that's a good point. We do go in, it's a cyclical thing. Any other? All right, it's time to
Our hearts receive the blessing.